In a fluorescent-lit diner on the outskirts of Phoenix, a quiet janitor mopping floors at 2 a.m. was moments away from witnessing something that would shatter everything he believed about his own business. What started as routine cleaning quickly turned into a nightmare when the night manager made a move that crossed every line imaginable. But Noah Kane wasn't just a maintenance worker. For 20 years, he had built Kane's Diner from nothing, 12 locations across Arizona, built on trust, respect, and second chances. When Brenda Wolfe attempted to use his restaurant as a front for pharmaceutical trafficking, she didn't realize she was betraying someone who had sacrificed everything to create honest work for desperate people. Kane launched an undercover investigation that unleashed consequences far beyond a simple firing, exposing a network of corruption that had been bleeding his employees dry while they suffered in silence. What began as a suspicious inventory report transformed into a moral reckoning that would redefine what leadership really means. After that night, everyone who worked the graveyard shift would never forget why the name Kane meant more than just a paycheck. Before we dive into this story of hidden corruption and unexpected heroism, can you tell us where you're watching from right now? If you've ever felt invisible at work, or wondered what your boss really thinks about you, this story might hit closer to home than you expect. Go ahead and smash that like button, and subscribe because the truth about workplace loyalty is about to get very real. The security monitor flickered, its blue glow casting shadows across an empty office. 2:03 a.m. Grainy footage showed the back entrance of Kane's Diner, number 47. Fluorescent light bleeding onto cracked asphalt. A figure in a baseball cap approached. The door, not an employee, not at this hour. The timestamp glitched as a thick envelope changed hands between the stranger and someone just out of frame. Then the screen went black. 6 hours earlier, Noah Kane pulled his rusted Honda into the employee parking lot, gravel crunching under worn tires. The neon sign buzzed overhead. Kane's Diner open 24/7. His name blazed in red letters. But tonight, he was nobody. Just another invisible worker clocking in for the graveyard shift. He'd built this chain from nothing, 12 locations across Arizona, each one a testament to second chances and honest work. But something was rotting at location number 47. Employee complaints had been flooding in 4 months. Missing inventory, hostile management, plummeting morale. The numbers told one story. Tonight, he'd find the truth. Noah adjusted his baseball cap and grabbed a worn mop bucket from his trunk. The janitor's uniform felt foreign against his skin blue polyester that smelled of industrial detergent. He'd worn $1,000 suits to board meetings, but this felt more honest somehow. This was how it started. 20 years ago, mopping floors at a truck stop outside Tucson. The back door opened with a rusty squeal. Immediately, the familiar smell hit him: coffee, grease, and something else. Tension. It hung in the air like smoke. "You, the new cleaner?" The voice belonged to a woman in her 40s, auburn hair pulled back severely, name tag reading Brenda, night manager. Her eyes were steel gray, appraising him like damaged goods. "Yes, ma'am, Noah." He kept his voice soft, shoulders hunched. "It's Ms. Wolfe. You're 20 minutes late." Noah glanced at the clock. 10:07 p.m. His shift started at 10. "Sorry. I don't apologize. Fix it." Brenda turned away, dismissing him. "Luis will show you around. Try not to get in the way." The kitchen hummed with subdued activity. Luis, barely 20, with kind eyes and calloused hands, looked up from the fryer. A genuine smile broke across his face. The first Noah had seen all evening. "Hey, welcome to the night shift," Luis said, wiping his hands on his apron. "I'm Luis. Don't let Brenda scare you, she's all bark." Noah shook his hand, noting the burn scars along Luis's forearms. "Old injuries? From careless training? Or worse, indifferent supervision?" "Thanks. I'm just here to keep things clean." "Coffee." Luis gestured toward a pot that had seen better days. "Fair warning, it's been brewing since 8, but it's hot and it's free." "That'd be great." As Luis poured, Noah studied the kitchen with trained eyes. Surface cleanliness masked deeper problems. Equipment held together with electrical tape, temperature logs with suspicious gaps, a walk-in cooler door that didn't seal properly. This wasn't the standard he'd built his reputation on. "So what brings you to the overnight crew?" Luis asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Noah had rehearsed this. "Need the hours. Day jobs are getting harder to find." "Tell me about it." "I've been trying to get moved to days for months," but Luis glanced toward the dining room where Brenda was berating a server. "Politics, you know." Through the pass-through window, Noah watched Brenda inspect tables like a drill sergeant, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The server Eliza, according to her name, to Gunder the criticism with practiced indifference. But Noah caught the flash of something else in her eyes. Protection. When Brenda moved on, Eliza immediately checked on Luis. "Do you okay, baby?" she asked softly. "She's been extra charming tonight." "I'm fine, Elisa, thanks." Noah pretended to organize cleaning supplies while absorbing the dynamic. Eliza was older, maybe who'd fought for everything she had. When she smiled at Luis, it was maternal protective. When she looked at Brenda's back, it was pure steel. "New janitor," Luis explained. Elisa studied Noah with sharp eyes. "Welcome to paradise." she said, dryly. Word of advice, stay invisible. Brenda doesn't like distractions. As if summoned, Brenda's voice cracked across the kitchen. Luis, these fries are soggy. Start over. Noah watched Luce's shoulders sag. The fries looked perfect golden and crisp, but Luis dumped them without protest, starting fresh. The waste made Noah's jaw clench. And you, Brenda pointed at Noah. Floor needs mopping. Start with the dining room. Noah grabbed his mop, grateful for the chance to observe. The dining room was nearly empty, just a trucker nursing coffee and a couple sharing pie. Normal for a Wednesday night. But something felt off, like a theater between performances. He mopped in slow, methodical strokes, invisible labor that gave him perfect surveillance. From the corner of his eye, he watched Brenda unlock a filing cabinet and pull out a leather-bound ledger, the standard inventory book they used at other locations. She made careful notes, glancing repeatedly at the clock. 10:47 p.m. The trucker left, engine rumbling into the distance. The couple finished their pie and wandered into the night, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sizzle of the fryer. This was when the real shift began, when the world looked away and the vulnerable had only each other. Noah wrung out his mop and moved closer to the kitchen. Through the pass-through, he could see Luis prepping for the midnight rush that would never come. Not in this neighborhood, not on a weeknight. So why keep someone on the fryer all night? Eliza, Brenda's voice carried a new edge. We're expecting a delivery around 2. Make sure the back door's unlocked. Elisa paused in her wiping. What kind of delivery? The kind that keeps your paychecks coming? Brenda's smile was ice. Unless you have a problem with that? No problem. But Noah saw the tension in Eliza's movements, the way she glanced protectively toward Luis. Whatever was happening at 2 a.m., it wasn't standard company business. He continued mopping, each stroke bringing him closer to the truth. This wasn't just about poor management or personality conflicts. This was about something darker, something that happened when the world wasn't watching. The clock above the coffee station read 11:15 p.m., less than 3 hours until 2 a.m. Noah Kane, CEO and founder, was about to discover what his name really meant on the night shift. The pressure began at 11:30 p.m. sharp, like Brenda ran on some internal cruelty timer. Luis, these onions are cut wrong. Do them again. She dumped a perfectly diced prep bowl into the trash. 6 hours of work vanishing in seconds. And this time, try to remember you're supposed to be a professional. Noah's mop stilled. The onions had been cut exactly to company specification 1/4-inch dice. Uniform and clean. He'd written those standards himself. Luis said nothing, just reached for a fresh onion and started over. His movements were precise, practiced, but Noah caught the slight tremor in his hands. Exhaustion or frustration, maybe both. You okay with that? Elisa muttered under her breath, sliding past Noah with a coffee pot. Just want to keep my job? Luis replied quietly. Noah resumed mopping, his jaw tight. He'd built Kane's diner on respect for the work, for the workers, for the simple dignity of serving good food to people who needed it. Watching Brenda tear Luis down for sport made his stomach turn. The clock ticked toward midnight. 3 more customers trickled in, night workers, grabbing late dinners, treating the staff with the casual courtesy of people who understood working odd hours. They left decent tips and quiet thanks. Normal interactions that felt surreal against the backdrop of Brenda's simmering hostility. At 12:15 a.m., Noah noticed it, Brenda slipping into the back office, emerging with a cardboard box that definitely wasn't on tonight's delivery manifest. She stashed it in the walk-in cooler, behind legitimate inventory where casual inspection wouldn't find it. Hey, new guy. Ronnie, the security guard, materialized beside Noah's mop bucket. Mid-40s, soft around the middle, with the bored expression of someone counting hours until dawn. You seen any weirdos hanging around outside? No, sir. Everything's been quiet. Good management's been paranoid about break-ins lately. Ronnie's radio crackled with dispatches from other locations. He turned the volume down, more interested in his phone than actual security. Just keep your eyes open. Yeah. Noah nodded, filing away the information. Break-ins? Or was management worried about witnesses? 1 a.m. brought a power surge that flickered the lights and made the coffee machine hiccup. In that brief moment of darkness, Noah saw Brenda's face, clearly raw panic, quickly masked. When the lights steadied, she was checking her watch with the intensity of someone watching a countdown. System's getting old, Luis said conversationally. Happens a couple times a week. But Brenda wasn't listening. She was in the office again, this time with her personal cell phone pressed to her ear. Noah couldn't hear the words, but her body language screamed anxiety. Whatever was scheduled for 2 a.m., it was still happening. 1:15 a.m. A new customer pushed through the front door, a man in his 60s, nervous energy radiating from his hunched shoulders. He took a cornered booth and ordered only coffee, hands shaking as he lit a cigarette despite the no smoking signs. Sir, you can't, Eliza started. Leave him, Brenda said sharply. He's fine. The man's eyes darted to the back of the restaurant, toward the employee entrance. Scouting. Noah was sure of it now. He moved his cleaning closer, pretending to scrub a stain that had been gone for 20 minutes. The nervous man kept checking his watch, an old digital model with numbers that glowed green in the dim light. 1:23 a.m., 1:24 a.m. Luis Brenda's voice cut through the quiet. Take your break. 15 minutes. I'm okay, Ms. Wolf. Don't need, I said. Take your break. The steel in her voice left no room for argument. Luis untied his apron, confusion clear on his face. His usual break wasn't until 3 a.m., but he walked toward the back door, passing Noah with a helpless shrug. That's when Noah realized Brenda was clearing witnesses. Eliza, go inventory the storage room. Make sure we have enough napkins for tomorrow. We just checked an hour ago. Check again. Eliza's eyes narrowed, but, she complied. That left only Noah, Brenda, Ronnie, and the nervous customer. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Noah squeezed his mop and moved toward the restrooms, keeping his movements casual while positioning himself with sight lines to both the dining room and the back entrance. The nervous customer was sweating now, cigarette ash falling unnoticed onto his untouched coffee. 1:47 a.m. The man's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, stubbed out his cigarette, and headed for the restroom. But instead of going in, he slipped toward the back corridor where the employee entrance waited in shadows. Noah was already moving. Abandoning his mop to follow at a distance, he pressed himself against the wall as the man peered through the back door's window, clearly watching for something. 1:52 a.m. A soft knock echoed through the corridor. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short again. The nervous man opened the door. You're early, a voice whispered from outside. Traffic was light. She ready. Give it 5 more minutes. Ronnie's distracted. Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. From his position, he could see into the kitchen where Brenda stood rigid by the pass-through, watching the security guard scroll through his phone with practiced obliviousness. This was it. 20 years of building something clean and honest, and it was rotting from the inside while he signed checks in a distant office. His employees, good people like Luis and Eliza, were trapped in the middle, too afraid to speak up, too desperate to quit. 1:58 a.m. The nervous customer returned to his booth, but his coffee stayed untouched. He was just maintaining cover now. Noah retreated to his mop bucket, mind racing. He could call the police, but for what? He hadn't actually seen anything illegal yet. He could confront Brenda directly, but that would blow his cover and potentially put Luis and Eliza at risk if they were unknowing participants. 2 o'clock a.m. The diner felt different, now charged with the electric tension of secrets about to unfold. Brenda moved with sudden purpose, disappearing into the office one final time. Noah gripped his mop handle and waited. Whatever was about to happen, he'd finally see what his silence had cost. The back door opened with a soft squeal of hinges. At 2 a.m. exactly, Kane's diner transformed into something Noah barely recognized. The nervous customer rose from his booth, moving with practiced confidence toward the back corridor. Ronnie remained oblivious, earbuds blocking out reality while his phone screen cast blue shadows across his face. The security camera's red recording lights had mysteriously gone dark, disabled, or redirected. Noah couldn't tell which. From his position near the restrooms, Noah watched Brenda emerge from the office carrying a manila envelope thick enough to choke on. Her usual rigid composure had cracked completely, replaced by the jittery energy of someone walking a tightrope over an abyss. The back door opened with its familiar squeal. A man stepped inside to something, wearing a maintenance uniform that looked legitimate until you noticed the designer shoes beneath worn coveralls and the nervous way he avoided the overhead lights. He carried a clipboard in one hand and a small medical cooler in the other, the kind used for transporting temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals. You're cutting it close, Brenda, he whispered, glancing toward the dining room. I had to make sure. The coast was clear. Coast always has to be clear. Her voice carried the strain of months of deception. You got my payment? Brenda handed over the envelope with trembling fingers. The man rifled through its contents with practiced efficiency. Noah realized, watching bills flutter in the harsh fluorescent light, far more than any legitimate maintenance contract would ever require. Hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars changing hands in his restaurant, suite, and the merchandise. The man asked, tucking the money into his jacket. Brenda led him toward the walk-in cooler, keys jangling with nervous energy. Noah crept closer, using the prep stations as cover, his heart hammering so loud he was certain they'd hear it. Through the cooler's glass door, he watched Brenda retrieve the cardboard box she'd hidden earlier, the one that wasn't on any delivery manifest, the one that had no business being in his restaurant. The exchange happened with choreographed efficiency, cash for contents unknown. But as the man lifted the box, checking its weight, Noah caught a glimpse of the labels through the worn cardboard. Pharmaceutical markings, prescription medication names he recognized, expiration dates that had passed months, maybe years ago. His blood turned to ice water in his veins. They weren't just skimming money or selling food off the books. They were trafficking expired medications, drugs that desperate, uninsured people might buy at discount prices, not knowing they were potentially dangerous or completely ineffective. People like Luce's mother, struggling with medical bills that chose between medication and rent. Same time next week? The man asked, securing the box under his arm. If I'm still here, Brenda replied, wrapping her arms around herself. Corporate's been asking questions? Lots of questions. You worry too much? Be who's gonna rat you out? Your night crew. The man's laugh was ugly, dismissive. That kid Luis is too scared to sneeze without permission, and the waitress knows. Better than to bite the hand that feeds her tips. Noah's hands clenched into fists, knuckles white against the mop handle. They were using his employees' desperation against them. Lise, supporting his diabetic mother, Eliza, raising 2 kids on waitress wages, people who couldn't afford to lose their jobs, even when those jobs came with moral compromises that kept them awake at night. Just be careful, the man continued, adjusting his fake maintenance cap. Word on the street is the owner's been sniffing around. Some corporate big shot playing private investigator? Brenda's face went pale as paper. What kind of sniffing around? The expensive kind. Private investigators? Financial audits? Surprise inspections? Could be nothing, but these franchise guys don't usually get their hands dirty unless something big is brewing. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. Noah Kane, playing janitor to investigate his own restaurant while his employees lived in fear of the very person who'd built the company to protect them. A sound from the kitchen made them both freeze, the back door opening again. Luis had returned from his break early, pushing through the entrance just as the mysterious visitor was preparing to leave with his illegal cargo. Time crystallized into sharp, dangerous moments that would define everything. Luis stopped dead in the threshold, taking in the scene with growing horror. Brenda clutching cash, a stranger with a box of questionable merchandise, the cooler door hanging open like evidence of guilt made visible. Luis, Brenda's voice was strangled, desperate. You're supposed to be on break. 15 more minutes. I forgot my phone charger. Luis's eyes darted between Brenda and the stranger, understanding dawning in his young face like a terrible sunrise. I'll just grab it, and no. The word cracked like a whip through the fluorescent air. You'll stay right there. Don't move. The stranger stepped forward, suddenly looking less nervous and infinitely more dangerous. His maintenance worker facade dropped completely, revealing something harder underneath. Kid's seen too much. Brenda, way too much. He hasn't seen anything, Brenda said quickly, panic creeping into her voice. Have you, Luis? You haven't seen anything at all. Luis stood frozen in the doorway, caught between honesty and survival, between doing right and keeping his job. Noah watched the young man's face cycle through emotions: fear, disappointment, the crushing weight of adult choices forced on someone barely out of his teens. I don't know what you're talking about, Luis said finally, his voice barely above a whispered out. It was the wrong answer, the safe answer, the desperate answer, but wrong in every way that mattered to the person he'd been 5 minutes ago. Brenda's relief was visible, her shoulders sagging. Smart boy, good boy. Now go back outside and finish your break. Take your time. Actually, the stranger interjected, his voice carrying a new edge that made Noah's skin crawl. Maybe the kid should stick around. Help us all understand each other better. Make sure we're all on the same page about what did and didn't happen here tonight. The threat hung in the air like poison gas, unspoken but unmistakable. Noah watched Luis's hands begin to shake as the full weight of his situation became crystal clear. He wasn't just a witness anymore, he was potential leverage, collateral damage in someone else's criminal enterprise. That's when Noah Kane made his choice. He stepped out of the shadows. Mop still in hand, still wearing the uniform of invisibility that had made him disappear for 6 hours. But something fundamental had shifted in his posture, his presence. The careful hunch of his shoulders straightened into the bearing of someone accustomed to command. The deferential tilt of his head leveled into direct, unwavering eye contact. That's enough, he said quietly, but his voice carried an authority that cut through the fluorescent hum like a blade. 3 faces turned toward him. Brenda's cycling rapidly from confusion to recognition to dawning horror. The stranger's narrowing with sudden suspicion. Luis's widening with something that might have been hope breaking through despair. Noah, Luis whispered, like he was seeing a ghost made flesh. But Noah was looking at Brenda now, seeing her clearly, for the first time all night. Not a villain, exactly, but a person so cornered by circumstances, so twisted by desperation, that she'd convinced herself exploitation was just survival by another name. Let him go, Noah said quietly, but his voice carried an authority that cut through the fluorescent hum like steel. This is between us now. The stranger's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, but Noah's unwavering stare stopped him cold. I wouldn't recommend that, Noah said, his tone conversational but edged with something dangerous. Those security cameras aren't as disabled as you think they are, and I've got 20 years of experience dealing with people who confuse desperation with opportunity. It was a calculated bluff, but delivered with the absolute confidence of someone who'd built an empire from nothing and refused to watch it crumble in a backly pharmaceutical deal. The stranger hesitated, eyes darting between Noah's steady gaze and the exit, calculating odds and consequences that all seemed to end badly for him. You have exactly 30 seconds to walk out that door, Noah continued, never raising his voice above normal conversation. After that, I call the police and explain how expired medications ended up in my restaurant's walk-in cooler. 28 your restaurant. The stranger's voice cracked with confusion and growing panic. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Noah reached into his back pocket with deliberate slowness, pulling out a worn leather wallet that had seen 2 decades of honest business. He flipped it open to reveal his driver's license, company identification, and a business card reading Noah Kane, founder and CEO, Kane's Diner Enterprises. Kane's Diner? He said simply, holding the ID where everyone could see it. My name's been on that sign outside for 20 years. Every single location, every single employee, every single decision that led to this moment. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the industrial hum of the walk-in cooler, the distant buzz of fluorescent lights, and Luce's sharp intake of breath as the full magnitude of the situation hit him. The stranger's face cycled through emotions. In rapid succession: disbelief, recognition, calculation, and finally the cold realization that he'd walked into a trap he never saw coming. He spun toward Brenda, whose complexion had gone the color of old dishwater. You didn't tell me the actual owner was working here. You said it was just some corporate inspection. Some pencil-pushing bean counter. I didn't know, Brenda whispered, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. Nobody told me he was coming. Nobody said anything about undercover investigations or 15 seconds, Noah said, his eyes locked on the stranger's face. The man grabbed his medical cooler with shaking hands and bolted for the door, pausing only to point an accusatory finger at Brenda. This is your mess now, lady. Your problem, your consequences. Don't expect any help cleaning it up. The back door slammed shut with a metallic clang that seemed to reverberate through the entire restaurant. In the sudden quiet, Noah could hear his own heartbeat, Luce's rapid breathing, and somewhere in the distance, the soft sounds of Elisa restocking supplies, completely unaware of the life-changing drama that had just unfolded. Luis, Noah said gently, his voice completely transformed from the commanding authority he'd used moments before. Could you please ask Elisa to join us? Tell her we need to have an important conversation. All of us together. The young man nodded, wordlessly, and disappeared toward the storage room. Noah could hear muffled conversation, Eliza's sharp, concerned questions, Luce's stammered attempts at explanation, the sound of someone trying to process the impossible. So, Brenda said, her voice flat with resignation, you're going to fire me? It wasn't really a question, more like someone stating an inevitable conclusion. That depends, Noah replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down with the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd just watched his life's work nearly implode. He gestured to the chair across from him. Help me understand how we got to this point. Help me understand how this happened in a place I specifically built to give people second chances and honest opportunities. Brenda remained standing, arms crossed defensively across her chest like armor against judgment. You really want to know the truth? Or are you just collecting evidence for your corporate lawyers to use against me? I want to know, Noah said simply, and something in his tone suggested he meant it. I need to understand. She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound, just bitter, exhausted cynicism. You want to know what it's really like? Fine. Want to know what it's like working overnight shifts at minimum wage while your day managers collect quarterly bonuses and drive company cars? You want to know what it's like watching younger, prettier servers get promoted over you because they're better at playing office politics and smiling at the right people? That's not how you want to know what it's like having a husband with stage 4 lung cancer and medical bills that consume 3/4 of your paycheck before you can even deposit it. Her voice cracked like old leather under pressure. Working 60-hour weeks across 2 different jobs and still having to choose between his chemotherapy medication and keeping the electricity turned on. Noah absorbed this information, pieces of a larger and infinitely more complicated picture falling into place with sickening clarity. The pharmaceutical trafficking. How long has this been going on? 6 months, maybe 7. Started small and innocent, just helping a guy I knew from my husband's cancer support group dispose of expired inventory from his warehouse job. Figured nobody got hurt if desperate, uninsured people could access cheap medication instead of no medication at all. She finally sat down, suddenly looking far older than her 40-something years. Do you have any idea how much insulin costs without insurance coverage? How much cancer medication costs when Medicare refuses to cover experimental treatments? But it escalated beyond that, Noah said. It wasn't really a question. It always escalates, doesn't it? She shrugged with helpless resignation. First, it was insulin past its expiration date, still medically effective, just not legally sellable through normal channels. Then it was pain medication for people who couldn't afford regular doctor visits. Then antibiotics, blood pressure medications, diabetes supplies. Her voice trailed off into exhausted silence. Eventually, it became whatever paid enough to keep the lights on and prevent the hospital from repossessing my husband's life support equipment. Elisa appeared in the doorway with Luis close behind, both moving with the careful uncertainty of people who'd learned through hard experience that adult conversations usually meant someone was about to lose something important. Please sit down, Noah said, his voice gentle but carrying undeniable authority. Both of you. We need to talk about everything that's been happening here. They took chairs on the opposite side of the table from Brenda, the physical distance, creating an invisible but absolutely clear divide between guilt and innocence, between complicity and victimization. "How much did you two actually know about what was happening here during these 2 a.m. meetings?" Noah asked directly. Eliza spoke first, her voice steady despite the obviously stressful circumstances. "We knew something unusual was going on at 2 a.m. every week. Brenda would always send us away on convenient errands, clear the dining room of customers, make absolutely sure we were busy somewhere else in the building. But we figured it was safer and smarter not to ask direct questions about it. I desperately needed this job," Luis added quietly, his hands nervously fidgeting with his apron strings. "My mother's medical bills for her diabetes. The night shift pays $1.50 more per hour than the day shift, and we need every single penny we can get. I honestly couldn't afford to be curious about things that might get me in trouble." Noah nodded slowly, understanding flooding through him like ice water. "And Brenda used that against you. Used your desperation, your financial fear, your absolute need to keep working no matter what." "I never directly threatened them," Brenda protested weakly, but her voice completely lacked conviction. "I never explicitly said I would fire them. If they asked questions or you didn't have to make direct threats," Noah interrupted, his voice harder and more disappointed than angry. "You created and maintained an environment where fundamentally good people were systematically afraid to do the right thing, where they had to choose between their moral conscience and their economic survival. That's a different kind of threat, Brenda. That's actually the worst kind of coercion." He turned back to Luis and Eliza, studying their faces carefully in the harsh fluorescent lighting. "You both suspected something was seriously wrong, didn't you? But you stayed quiet and looked the other way because you simply couldn't afford to lose these jobs." Both nodded, shame and relief clearly warring in their expressions. "And you," Noah looked directly at Brenda with something approaching sadness. "We convinced yourself that you were actually the victim in this situation, that your circumstances forced you into illegal activity, that you truly didn't have any other realistic choices, didn't I?" she asked. But the question came out much smaller and less certain than she'd intended. "No," Noah said with absolute firmness. "Your circumstances created enormous pressure and made legitimate solutions much more difficult, expensive, and complicated. But you still chose this specific path. You chose to involve my employees, to use my restaurant, to put my customers and my entire business at serious legal and moral risk to solve your personal financial problems." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, marking time while the full weight of truth settled over all of them like dust after a devastating explosion. "So what happens now?" Elisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah sat quietly for a long moment, thinking not just about justice and consequences, but about redemption and second chances. Not just about punishment and blame, but about what kind of leader he truly wanted to be when faced with the absolute worst of human desperation and moral failure. "Brenda," he said finally, his voice carrying a weight of finality, "your employment here is terminated immediately. I need you to surrender all your keys, access codes, and any company property in your possession. You'll be escorted to your vehicle." She nodded, unsurprised but somehow still visibly deflated by the absolute finality of it. "However," Noah continued, and everyone looked up sharply at that unexpected word, "I'm not calling the police tonight or pressing immediate charges. You'll have exactly 48 hours to voluntarily contact the authorities yourself. Complete surrender, full cooperation with their investigation, total transparency about whatever criminal network you are participating in. In exchange, I won't pursue charges for theft, fraud, or endangering my employees, and if I need a job reference, I'll confirm your employment dates and state that you resigned for undisclosed personal reasons. Nothing more, nothing less." Noah's voice remained firm but not unkind. "But understand this clearly, Brenda. If you don't contact police within 48 hours, if you attempt to flee or continue this operation elsewhere, I will use every legal and financial resource at my disposal to hunt you down. Do we completely understand each other?" She nodded again, this time with something that might have been genuine gratitude mixed with her obvious resignation. "Luis, Eliza." Noah turned to face them directly, his entire demeanor shifting. "Thank you both for your honesty tonight. I know it took real courage to tell me the complete truth when you could have simply kept quiet and hoped for the best." "Are we getting fired too?" Luis asked, his voice small and genuinely frightened. "Absolutely not," Noah said with conviction that made both of them visibly straighten. "But everything is going to change around here, starting immediately and continuing indefinitely. The night shift will have proper management, appropriate support, and the respect you've always deserved. No more fear-based leadership, no more looking the other way, no more impossible choices between your job security and your moral conscience." "Who's going to manage the night shift now?" Eliza asked practically. Noah smiled genuinely for the first time all evening, still working out the specific details. "But for the immediate future, I'll be taking over personally both day and night shifts until we can rebuild this place into what it should have been from the very beginning." "You're going to personally manage the restaurant?" Luis looked genuinely incredulous. "But you're the owner. You're the CEO of the entire company. I'm going to personally work the restaurant, Noah corrected with emphasis. There's a fundamental difference between managing people from a distance and working directly alongside them every single day. I started my career in kitchens exactly like this one, 20 years ago. Maybe it's finally time I remembered what that actually felt like and what it really meant. As they spent the next hour discussing immediate procedural changes, new reporting systems, proper channels for employee complaints, anonymous tip lines for concerns, and a complete overhaul of the toxic management culture, Noah felt something profound shifting inside himself, not just about this particular restaurant, but about what authentic leadership really meant when the stakes were highest and the moral choices were most difficult. True authority had nothing to do with power over people. It was entirely about accepting responsibility for their well-being. After Brenda gathered her personal belongings and left under security escort, the three remaining people sat in the suddenly quiet diner, processing everything that had just happened and everything that would need to happen next. So what do we do now? Elisa asked. Noah picked up his mop, the same humble tool he'd been carrying when he walked into this shift as a complete stranger 6 hours earlier. Now we finish what we started tonight. We serve every single person who comes through that door with genuine dignity and respect. We do the work that actually matters to real people's lives. And tomorrow night, we do it all over again, but better. You're really going to keep mopping floors yourself? Luis asked with wonder. I'm really going to keep mopping floors, Noah said with a genuine grin. Think you can teach this old boss a few important new tricks about what actually happens during the night shift? Luis smiled back, the first completely authentic, unguarded smile Noah had seen from him during the entire night. I think we can definitely manage that, Mr. Kane. Just call me Noah, he said simply. We're all just people here, trying to do honest work together. As dawn slowly approached and the first day shift workers began arriving for the morning rush, Noah Kane worked directly alongside Luis and Eliza, learning not just their specific procedures and responsibilities, but their personal stories, their individual struggles, their dreams for something better than what they'd been settling for. The neon sign outside continued, blazing its familiar promise into the lightning sky. Kane's Diner opened 24/7. But now, Noah finally understood what those words really meant. It wasn't just about hours of operation or business convenience. It was about being genuinely present when people needed you most. It was about showing up consistently when nobody else was watching. It was about proving every single day that leadership wasn't a position you held, it was a sacred promise you kept, especially in the darkness. The lesson Noah learned that night changed everything. True leadership isn't about the corner office, it's about getting your hands dirty when your people need you most. If this story opened your eyes to what authentic leadership really looks like, smash that like button like Noah smashed through the lies that night, and hit subscribe, because just like Noah discovered, the best stories happen when we dig deeper than the surface. What would you do if you discovered your business was being used for illegal activities? Would you have the courage to go undercover in your own company? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Remember, leadership isn't earned in boardrooms, it's revealed in break rooms, during night shifts, and in moments when nobody thinks the boss is watching. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the shadows of the night shift. I'll see you in the next story, where we'll explore what happens when ordinary people face extraordinary moral choices. Until then, keep watching, keep questioning, and keep believing that integrity matters more than authority.